this is one of those crackpot theories that really makes me sound like a nut. But think of some of the most accomplished, smartest, advanced people in the world, all the way from like Diogenes to Newton to Van Gogh to the fellow who invented the thingy that goes, you know, the thing. It's like an optical illusion where it looks like a straight line, but then it's actually like that, and it's really funny. But whoever invented that thing, these people have been reclusive and extremely opposed to society and just against the stance of the modern world, basically. So hear me out. This is sort of a thought experiment, but it is the type of thought experiment that very many psychiatrists and doctors would call inhumane, but perhaps there's some credence to it. Like, I'm not saying do this, I'm just suggesting it. I recognise how this is a very dodgy scheme of things, but I'm just putting it out there and hypothesising. So imagine if we take twins, yes? Two twins, immediately at birth, separate them. We have one raised just in the normal world, around people, with a family, and so, like, just as every human is raised, you know, in a world accompanied by other people. And then we take the other twin and put them in just an isolated patch of the woods with enough to survive, but, you know, not to thrive so much. And we leave them to live their lives in however they do, and then we come back. Also, we provide the child in the woods like knowledge of English and shit, so they can read, and we give them resources to read and stuff. We don't give them human contact as much as the other one does, and we just leave them to develop on their own within nature. You come back years later when they are 16, 17, 18, I would say the more neglected one, which I don't, the term neglected is definitely appropriate for this one, but I mean, neglect comes from, as in a traumatic way, comes from when you have the comparison of being able to know what non-neglective behavioural situations are. So this child would grow up in this way, completely attuned to this living, and would not know that it's being neglected because it does not know, you know, the accompaniment. So this child would grow up on its own in the wild, and I am 75% sure that if you took them, the more advanced one would be this one who had grown up completely away from society, completely in the world, able to embrace the world on its own accord, not being force-fed mantras designed by humanity over thousands of years. Like this child that grew up in the family, he might be a Christian, he might be a Muslim, a Jew, whatever, and he might have standard beliefs, you know, he might be a nihilist, a pessimist, he might be an utilitarian, like he will adopt other people's views. But the one who's grown up, because he's lived without this other influence, he's going to develop his own views, he's going to become his own sort of creature, he is going to develop his own way of living because he only knows his own way, basically. And I'd say probably he'd develop some sort of like pantheism, because, you know, if he's only presented with the nature around him, he would definitely give that some sort of divine, because I know humanity is always just wants to give divinity to something, or he'll develop a super huge ego where he is God, but that's a lot less likely because he wouldn't really have a known concept of God. So he would probably just develop very like bareback paganism type early religion. And if you think of it, the people most likely to be right about things are the people closest to the beginning. So maybe, you know, the pagans, the druids, and, you know, those who lived for the earth with the earth were more so correct than the Christians and the Abrahamics who came thousands of years after that point. Yeah, so that's just a bit of a thought experiment that maybe what is deemed inhumane, if we were to test it, which of course we can't with, you know, the rulings of human rights, basically we can't do that, but I'm pretty sure that it would improve and be a way to betterment, because the stance of society now is a inhibitor to the majority of progression. Like, if these people who do so well and succeed so much have to physically remove themselves from the world. That shows us how damaging the world is to just a person as a whole. So if we could test, complete isolation from society, or, a very diluted form of it, I'm sure we'd see much improvement. And from there, I know it's a huge step, but we could, shift society's structure to be something more accustomed and something better. And I think if we were allowed, which of course we're not, as I've said, it's inhumane and brutal to isolate a child for their entire growing up with current societal stands. Not saying I fully approve of it, but just saying it is in our current society because that's what we accept, and we don't accept otherwise. We criminalise that. But yeah, if we did that, I'm sure we could see better ways to live and exist in a governed society where we allow everyone to be an individual of their own. Like, if we just know us, we would do better than what we do knowing everyone and being exposed to so much, because when we have to find our own path, we find the right one, more so than being given 3,000 paths and forced down one, basically. So, moral of the video: neglect kids and they will do better than not. That's not what I mean. It's just a thought experiment, not meant to be done, because that goes against human rights, and I don't want the UN to come and beat me up. But yeah, that's the moral.